Welcome. I want to say if you have been looking to work from home or work from anywhere in the world, this is your topic for today. This is Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solution, and the real topic is work from anywhere, thriving with a truly remote accounting firm. And we're going to be talking with Nancy McClelland, who has done just that. As you can see, she has a beautiful pool in her background because of the fact that she's figured out how to have the lifestyle which lets her go anywhere and still serve her clients deeply. So you are in the right place if you're ready to take your firm remote, if you're transitioning current clients to a remote accounting firm, and also wondering what some of the challenges are of when you go remote, especially if you want to be traveling. So I suggest you have pen and paper ready. Nancy is very generous. She will be sharing a lot. She is wanting to have you do this also because it adds to your quality of life. It doesn't take from it. And also, you'll be able to know how to connect with Nancy as we wrap up. A little bit about her is her CPA firm is called The Dancing Accountant, and Nancy McClelland's been on a lifelong mission to support small businesses in their communities, as well as really being able to educate the professionals that serve them. She is known for her fun, personal, direct style, so it's no surprise that she insists that the future of accounting is truly built on relationships. If you want to find more about Nancy and the Dancing Accountant, you can go to thedancingaccountant.com. So Nancy, let's just jump right in. I'm so looking forward to this conversation because we both share a passion for traveling and being able to work from anywhere or work with people who are anywhere. Geography is no longer a restriction. So how did you find out how to be able to be remote and that it's possible to work anywhere that you have Wi-Fi access?
Well, first, Lauren, let me just say thank you so much for having me here because this truly is something that I'm passionate about. And I am so excited to be able to share my experiences with your listeners because I really think this is something that everybody can do. Um, First, I want to talk for a second about what a lifestyle firm really means, because what I'm going to share with you is how I'm choosing to spend my time because we have a fully remote firm. But it's not the same way that all of your listeners are going to want to spend their time necessarily. I think it's wonderful that you and I love to travel. We're in Mexico for all of tax season, which I'll be talking about in a moment. But it's not just that. Like there are other times of year, conference season where we'll go to, I'll go to a conference in Las Vegas, and then we'll go to spend a few weeks with friends in the Bay Area, and then I'll go to another conference. And so that's how I'm choosing to do it. But the phrase lifestyle firm, it really means so many different things. For me, the lifestyle isn't about working fewer hours, but it means that for some. For me, it means where I am during those hours and what my time off looks like. But for other members of our firm, it might be having the flexibility to run your own business simultaneously while working for another firm without losing that sense of camaraderie and while having others on the team to support your endeavors. Or it might mean, and this is the case for a couple of our team members, being able to go horseback riding every week or every day. It might mean being able to work on your art and your maker projects. We have one team member who lives in South Central Indiana in an artist's colony. It's amazing the work that she does. It could be about having the flexibility to raise your kids as a stay-at-home parent without having to give up on your training and skills and employment benefits. So I do think it's really important to define what lifestyle firm means for you so that you can target your goals. For me, it was, I want to spend all of tax season in Mexico. And that is how we made it happen for ourselves. Like I had a goal in mind. I think that people considering remote work, but especially while abroad or traveling, they need to ask themselves whether they have the drive to work hard in an environment when they feel like they should be relaxing or enjoying themselves. So what happens to me is that people will often feel sorry for me when they see me at a beach or a cafe with my laptop, and they'll be like, poor thing, working while on vacation. And I'm like, it's not vacation. It's my office. It can be in Mexico. It can be in the Bay Area, like I said, visiting family and friends, though I'll warn you on that one, it's its own set of challenges because people, they often don't understand that you're in the office when you're not, quote unquote, in the office.
Right.
Yeah. But ultimately it's about your mindset. So a lifestyle firm is the happy marriage of like dreams with reality, as my husband likes to say. So that's how we think of it. But when I go back to how it happened, it was entirely by chance. It was entirely by chance. About 10 years ago, I got very lucky because I had a great employee who was going to be leaving Chicago to move back home to Atlanta. And at first I was like, oh, that's a real shame, that I was going to lose this really great employee. And then I realized it was just stupid to lose her. And at the time, I was the only one in the firm who met with clients in person, and all our actual work, our deliverables, and what we were, the tax returns, the bookkeeping, the advisory, and the financial statements, that part of it was already remote because, all of our clients, they're hyper local. They're in our neighborhood in Chicago, but you were using QBO or we were logging in remotely to QB Desktop at the time. So it was really just about figuring out how to replace the weekly in-person meetings on my porch that I was having with this particular employee with Zoom. And so we figured that out. And then a dear colleague who sold her CPA firm, and I mentioned, she's moved to an artist colony in Southern Indiana. She reached out to ask if I needed a tax preparer because she knew I had remote staff. And she thought that would be a way she could keep her skills sharp, but without having to manage a team. And she's still with me to this day. So the going remote happened before the going to Mexico. And I recommend for anybody who's thinking that they want a lifestyle firm of their own, go remote first, then test it out while traveling and being in a foreign country.
And I want to agree with you because I went through a similar experience of going from a brick and mortar office to remote. And it is a transition doing that. There's some things about how do you have a relationship with people and that connection when it's through cameras instead of someone who is actually in your office and you can see the body language and the nuances and everything like that. So there are some shifts that need to occur in order for you to really continue to be client-centered. But with that being said, the thought of being in Mexico and working for most people seems like a dream. Doing it during tax season seems like the ultimate dream, I'm sure. So I know we've spoken about it, but I would love for you to share how that accidental opportunity arose and really changed the course of your life.
Lauren, I still can't believe it happened. It is, to me, just the craziest story and undoubtedly the craziest thing that's ever happened to us. As I mentioned, we stumbled into this. But my husband and I have always had a desire to live abroad. I was lucky enough to live abroad when I was a little kid. We lived in southern Spain. And he was raised in an Air Force family, so they moved around a lot. And so we've both always wanted this. Well, I have seasonal affective disorder, so I get really low energy when it's gray out and the days are short, which is basically Chicago in winter. And my husband was like, you're a paperless office and you speak Spanish. Why not go down to Mexico after you're done with the March 15th business filing deadline? Because at that point, we'd closed out our books. I was done with the in-person meetings and I was really head in the computer getting through as many individual tax returns and Schedule Cs as I could. And he was like, you'll still be working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it'll be in paradise. And it worked out great. The equipment was something a little bit tricky to figure out, but I know a lot of my colleagues have these wraparound screens and multiple monitors and things like that. I have a single laptop. That's all there is. And it works great for me because I make it work. I also have a really cool laptop bag that is designed for photographers in the field. And when you open it up and fold the sides out, it actually makes a little sort of shadow box, and you can tuck that laptop in it and sit outside in the sun working all day long. It is amazing. So I did that for years. And thank goodness, this is where the crazy part happens. thank goodness he was with me in March of 2020 when the pandemic broke out during my annual work retreat. So we had 2 carry-on bags and
Mm-hmm.
2.5 weeks, and that 2.5 weeks turned into 16 months and our residency cards. It turns out you don't need most of what you own. 2
Mm-hmm.
carry-on bags
Yeah.
was sufficient. And most places in the world, they have stores and they have Amazon and you
Mm-hmm.
can figure it out. You can figure it out. So, I mean, there's a huge sense of fulfillment in having achieved this. I also feel, and this was a side benefit I didn't anticipate, like we have a better handle on what retirement might look like because there are challenges that are just practical complexities of buying property, which, we rented for that 16-month period, and then we rented for the next couple of seasons, but then we bought a place of our own, which is where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of practical complexities. Opening a bank account, it turns out, is like weirdly difficult here. And so those are things that I figured we would be addressing during retirement, but now we're addressing them now. And we have a better handle on what that retirement is eventually going to look like.
And so I think that what I'm hearing is that even though it sounds like a dream, there's some challenges that need to be addressed in order to
Oh
make it work for
boy.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. There are never not going to be challenges, especially while traveling or living in another
Mm-hmm.
country. But there are challenges, just as you mentioned earlier, with running a remote firm, even if you are staying in your home environment. It's challenging to maintain a sense of company culture when everyone is in a different location.
Mm.
My admin, actually, she recently left and we had to replace her because even though she'd been with me for a long time, she had had 2 children sort of back to back. And she just couldn't focus with 2 little kids at home. And she really needed in-person adult
Mm.
interaction. She was like, I want to go back to bartending. She really, it wasn't working for her. So, and our adoption of month-end
Mm.
close software actually made things a little too efficient for her from the communication side. She didn't get enough
Right.
in-person interaction. Now, she
Mm-hmm.
did point out she doesn't have a passion for accounting like other members of our team. And I'll take that a step further to say everyone else on our team naturally reaches out to each other and to clients to set up a
Mm.
Zoom.
Right.
But that was hard for her because she was an introvert and she also had an evening schedule. So that was actually a real lesson to me to hire folks who already are comfortable working remotely and who are inclined to reach
Mm-hmm.
out to us or to clients personally if there are questions. Now, we do have like quarterly paid happy hours where I deliver cocktail kits and snacks to everyone and I send out a survey beforehand so we can learn more about each other. We play games, we catch up with each other, we do show and tell. And I let the team vote a client off the island every year, which I think helps us bond in a weird way. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have ways that we address it, but but you can't expect it's going to happen on its own. And I want to add one thing to that, which is in more direct response to your question about the practicalities and the
Mm-hmm.
challenges there.
Right.
Doing interesting things with your life, not just traveling and uh, living abroad, but any interesting thing in your life, it's inherently likely to introduce what my husband and I call unscheduled adventures.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for myself, but for my team. They have their lives and stuff happens either
Right.
to them or a great example of a positive one is, for example, when my admin decided, that she wanted to start a family. That was an unscheduled adventure for all of us, including
Mm-hmm.
her and her partner. And my CPA, she wanted to take a 6-week long sabbatical during extension season because that's when the artist colony has their annual artist tour. So, unscheduled adventures
Right.
are a challenge. It can be infuriating. It can be frustrating when trying to plan
Mm-hmm.
client work. So that's, I would say, one of our bigger challenges.
And part of what I'm hearing is three different points that you're making, Nancy, that I really want to highlight is, first of all, so many firm owners end up tolerating things because of the status quo, because they can't think out of the box and break out of some of that linear thinking or traditional thinking. And as a result, they end up sacrificing because of that. And what you did is you took the creative side of your personality and you said, what if? And that circumstance led to a solution so that you no longer had to tolerate the cold winters of Chicago while still serving your clients during tax season. So that's the first thing. The other thing, two things that I hear have to do with how your company was set up once you went from in person to virtual, and that you realize it might require a different type of personality that you work with in your firm or bring into your team for someone who's remote as opposed to when it's in person. And the other part of it is that you can still create a company culture, even though everybody is spread out all over the place. So I just wanted to highlight those points that you made because they're so juicy, and they might bring a light bulb for somebody who's paying attention to what we've been talking about, especially you don't have to tolerate the things that you hate. There
Yes.
is
Oh
a
my gosh.
solution.
I am so glad you broke it down like that because I am continually learning from my own experience doing this. This is
Mhm.
not something that and it's not going to be like that for anybody. You're not going to figure this out 100% and then go do it. Should you prepare? Yes. Are there things that you can anticipate? Yes. Do
Mhm.
you have to tolerate things that you don't want to tolerate? No.
Yeah.
However, you're not going to figure it all out on day one and say, okay, I've got this, I've got my checklist, and everything's going to go as planned. It's not going to
Mhm.
work like that. And so hearing you say those words to me while I am taking this journey is like, oh, yeah, you know what? That's
Mhm.
absolutely on point.
Mhm. Now, let's go to the thing that raises fear for everybody, which is the fear of losing clients when you tell them anything that's different from how it's always been, because people don't like change. So, what did you do to inform your clients that you're going ahead and having a remote firm, especially when your practice was regional and even within a neighborhood?
Yes, as a matter of fact, not only was it regional, it still is. It is a hyper local client base. I just found out a couple of days ago that I won Alignable's Local Business Person of the Year for my neighborhood of Logan Square in Chicago. Now, as you can see, I'm not in Logan Square
Right.
right now, and yet I still won that award. And for me, that experience had a lot to do with the timing of the pandemic, but it doesn't have to. You haven't missed your opportunity if you haven't done it yet. As a matter of fact, the pandemic and people's experiences during that, I think, can help people make this transition. So I was able to convince my clients to get on board with having a remote accounting firm, um, really in spite of myself. It was on me for presuming that they wouldn't get behind this. So
Mhm.
while I totally agree with you, nobody likes change, and our clients do freak out sometimes when you offer them change. But almost every single time that we have offered them change, my anticipation of their resistance to adopt that change has been much worse than the actual resistance. So a great example was after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act came out, um, as you know, tax work got a lot more complicated, and it's just continued to get more complicated since then. And I had to take a good hard look at my pricing after that, and was just like, no, this on average, each of our returns is going to take us this much longer than it did before.
Mhm.
So we're going to have to adjust for that. And oh, I just hemmed and hawed and I struggled with what those prices were going to look like and how I was going to communicate this to clients and to talk about what kind of value we were bringing to them and how we were, all of this stuff. I was so nervous. One client complained, three clients wrote back and said, it's about time. Really, really, that
Mhm.
actually happened, right? Another example, when we implemented Keeper this past year, which has been a game changer for us, that is a favorite piece of software that helps with month-end closes. But one component of it is client communication is changing from email to they still get an email notification, but then they go into basically a portal and they
Mhm.
have all of these questions laid out for them. They upload stuff there instead of to our Dropbox links, etc. And oh my gosh, again, hemmed and hawed. I worked forever on that intro email to make it as easy as possible and to really explain it to them. Oh, they love it. They love it. So it was on me for presuming that they wouldn't get behind. Give your clients the benefit of the doubt. If you
Mhm.
have a good relationship with them, um, you mentioned when we started this out that I believe that the future of accounting is based on personal relationships. It is. It's there right now. It's going to get more so as the drudgery gets pulled away from us because of AI and the various tools and technologies that are available to us. If you have good personal relationships with their clients, I think this is going to be an easier sell than you think it will be.
Mhm.
As mentioned earlier, we were already remote in every way except for my in-person meetings with them, which I was doing generally at a local cafe or at their places of business. It's funny, I have one client that is a local cafe and bar that is a client of mine, and we have to leave their cafe and bar to go have meetings so that we can go off site for her.
Mhm.
But then all my other clients want to have their meetings at that same cafe and bar. So it's hilarious how that works. So very local, very in
Mhm.
person for those meetings. And I had hoped that someday we could spend all of tax season in Mexico, but I couldn't figure out how to get my clients on board. Well, of course, they figured out Zoom really fast during the pandemic.
Mhm.
And we all did. Anybody who wasn't already on Zoom or Google Meet or any of the various platforms, they figured it out. And more importantly, they saw how deeply entrenched in their challenges I was in those early days. I had free weekly Zoom calls for all clients, and I even encouraged them to invite their small business owner friends who weren't
Mhm.
clients of mine and who didn't have this kind of support. Um, about PPP, ERC, RRF, the IDL, the
Right.
entire alphabet soup of financial relief.
Mhm.
There was no doubt in their minds that I had their back. And so now they don't care where I am. They know I'm there for them, no
Right.
matter when or where or what. I am there for them. They don't even, most of the time, they don't even ask me in emails anymore. And if we do get on a Zoom, they'll see by my background, hey, you're not in Chicago right now, right? Like it's pretty obvious.
And it's not a virtual background.
It's not a virtual background. It really looks like this.
Mhm.
So with the exception of the fact that I feel a little bit guilty being in this beautiful environment while they're struggling with the weather in Chicago at times, they really, if you are focused as you should be anyway, regardless of whether you have a remote firm or not, if you are focused on the personal relationships with the clients, if you are showing them the value that you bring, if you are
Mhm.
building bonds with them that make it clear to them that you care as much about their business as they do, then this part of it is not a hard sell. But I didn't know that
Right.
until it happened. And so I
Mhm.
don't want anybody else to keep doubting their own client base the way that my clients deserved more credit than I was giving them.
Mhm. And I think that part of what you're talking about also is that you didn't have a transactional type of firm to begin with, where you were just cranking out 1,000 tax returns
That is
during
true.
tax season. You were already invested in the relationship, and that is really the key, is that they knew you, you know them, you know a little bit about them also and what's top of mind for them. And because of that, they're stickier, is how I look at it. Uh,
Stickier.
and they're more likely to adapt when you're communicating, which is also key to some changes that you're making. But the other thing that I think is probably going on is you might be inspiring some of your clients to consider making a change also in order to have their profession enhance their lifestyle also. Because there's got
Absolutely.
to be clients that hate being in Chicago in January.
Why would you say that, Lauren? You are right. You are right. I have been so lucky as to find out from clients and colleagues left
Mhm.
and right that in fact my doing this has inspired them.
Mhm.
There's one in particular who like left to do a Buddhist yoga retreat and is now teaching. Now I'm not saying I was the only inspiration in
Mhm.
doing that, but it helped her see that not everything she went virtual for a portion of her business during the pandemic and then realized, hey, let's keep this virtual portion of it so that I can do
Mhm.
some more of what I want to do.
And like you, I have been able to work from other places. Our daughter and her family live in Israel, so we spent an entire month in Israel
Wow.
during December during the pandemic, actually. So I
That's
understand some of the
wonderful.
challenges. One of the challenges for me was figuring out time zones,
Yes.
but internet connection also. And what do you see for you when you're running your firm and you might be in another part of the world and not in the US?
Right. So let me address some of the technological stuff first because
Mm-hmm.
in our particular situation, we're in Mérida, which is the capital of the state of Yucatan. So we're about a 4 hour drive west of Cancun and about 45 minutes south of the Gulf. So we're inland, we're not on a beach. I have done work retreats from the beach before, and we did struggle with internet service, unquestionably. And during the rainy season here, we will sometimes struggle with internet service because if a tropical storm comes through, um, it can knock everything out. Uh, we picked Merida partially because this entire city has fiber and therefore is a place that digital nomads actually are excited about because not only do they have fiber, but they have plenty of cafes with outdoor courtyards that you can work in and have solid internet while you're doing that. So if you are serious about doing this, not just as the a few weeks here or a month or two there, but this is something that you're going to do for a period of time, do your research to find out what the infrastructure is like where you're going to be, because I do think that that's important. And I also think that you need to plan for, in our case, you plan for hurricanes, right? Like we have lots of battery packs that we keep charged all the time. We have lighting. We have ways that we can charge our phones. We have phone service is actually really difficult because it's very expensive on our plan to make international calls, and the Wi-Fi calls don't always work. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. So doing research and testing things out for a shorter period of time and figuring out what those problems are going to be is going to help you go back to that same place. We would love to try a bunch of different places all over the world, but this is where we come for tax season because I can't take those kinds of chances. I know
Mm-hmm.
it's going to work here during this season. This is not the rainy season, so that works out well for me. As far as time zones are concerned, we also chose a place that is in the central time zone, and
Mm-hmm.
we got thrown for a loop though because last year they voted to stop changing time zones all across all
Okay.
across Mexico, right? So I'm in Central right now, but after Saturday, I am going to be on Eastern if I am in calculating that in the right direction. So I have a trick. I have a
Mm-hmm.
trick for that. I leave my computer on Chicago time all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when friends come to visit us in Mexico, and I say, hey, we're going to do sunset wine at such and such a clock, I make it clear to them ahead of time. Sunset wine at whatever o'clock, that's Chicago time. And it doesn't matter what time it is here. That is Chicago time because their daylight savings time prior to this change was not the same dates. It was different
Right.
dates. So there were these shoulder periods. So I stay on Chicago time. I live my life on Chicago time. I would not say you have to do that, but I am really bad with remembering which direction a time zone is in. And if I can
Mm-hmm.
just make sure all my invites are going out and I'm interpreting people's incoming invites in my time zone, quote unquote, then that's what works well for me. That's my little trick.
Mm-hmm. And I'll actually say ditto to that. My my laptop that I bring with me stays on Pacific time, which is where I live, all the time, no matter where I am in the world. Also, and internet is the trickiest part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Internet can definitely be challenging. I have a lot of colleagues that I've talked to, of course, about people are
Mhm.
very interested in the fact that we do this. And so every once in a while, I'll I'll have like a virtual coffee or
Mhm.
cocktail with various colleagues that are doing the same kind of thing. Um, and there's one in particular who's a full-time RVer. And they'll be in a place sometimes just a few days, sometimes a few months. And she has a set of hotspots. She basically subscribes to a hotspot service for each of the major carriers.
Mm.
And that works out really well for her. She said they've only had to move camp once because she wasn't able to have a
Mhm.
sufficient signal. So there are ways to handle this.
Absolutely. There's a solution for everything right
Yeah,
now.
there really
Uh,
is. There really
So,
is.
so yes, it's easier than it used to be to work remote, because when I first started moving this direction, there wasn't even any video conferencing. Everything was done by audio and phone,
Mhm.
including there were no webinars, there were teleseminars at that point. And and so one of the things I do also recognize is that there might be things that you miss because you're not home or that
Mhm.
you're traveling a lot. So are there any things maybe that you do miss a little bit because of the fact that you are not in your home base
Oh,
for part of the year?
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, the converse to that, I will say, is that as much as I miss, I mean, an obvious one is I don't get to hang out with my friends or attend. I dance a lot and I don't get to go to the dance parties or the events. And I miss those. But this is tax season, and I had to say no to a lot of those while I was in Chicago. I feel a lot less FOMO being like, well, I can't. I literally cannot attend to those things because I'm in Mexico. There's nothing I can do about it,
Mhm.
as opposed to being in Chicago and having to say no, which really was a lot worse. I will say, I only had 9 days off in the first year of the pandemic, including weekends. Okay, Lauren. So
Mhm.
9 out of 365, where a normal person would have over 100. I never could have managed that if I hadn't been here. Most folks think of living in Mexico as like a hybrid work vacation lifestyle, but for me, it's anything but that. And that's actually a challenge for me in terms of how I'm perceived. Having
Mhm.
a second home or living in a foreign country um, it can be a symbol of elitism, but it comes from having aggressively paid off our mortgage in the first 18 years that we lived in our
Mhm.
Chicago condo that we were able to afford this. So a great example is that we decided to live on a boat when we were in Seattle for 2 years. We were there for 2 years because of my husband's job. Living on a boat was the most economical approach to being there that still had character.
Mhm.
Um, and yet it was totally seen as being some sort of luxury. It will tell you if you've ever
Mhm.
lived on a boat, it ain't no luxury. No way.
Only a cruise ship cabin. So.
No, so it is hard. One of my challenges to work with the difference between the perception of the life that I'm living by other people and the reality of it, which, by the way, is the topic of my upcoming panel at Randy Crabtree's Bridging the Gap conference, is the perception of perception versus reality in the lives of our biggest accounting
Mhm.
superstars. But also the challenge of maintaining your roots and your community living in Chicago only half the year, like that is unquestionably a challenge. Um, Making sure your clients know you're accessible and you've got their back no matter where you are, like we talked about earlier, that's
Mhm.
one way to mitigate it. Um, Continuing to shop at the small local stores while you're away through websites and emails and texts, even buying gift cards. You can do that. It's a challenge. You're not in the shop. You're not, I mean, our clients, these are the restaurants where we dine. These are the
Mhm.
stores where we shop. These are the people we hire for professional services. A lot of our clients are, we are their customers as well because it is a
Right.
very tight knit community. That is all a challenge to be away from it, but it is totally doable. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't undo what we've done But we do struggle to find ways to mitigate that and to stay plugged in. And our our Logan Square Facebook community page is a really good way. I make sure we're very active with Logan, excuse me, Logan Square Preservation Society, and we have text threads and emails and in our condo association, I'm still the treasurer, right? Like I'm still and we're constantly, we've got that text thread going about stuff. So you can do it. It is hard. It's a challenge, and I do miss being home sometimes.
But I think that the proof for you is that you were still voted as the most involved member of the community by Alignable. So it does take some effort. It might be a little bit harder, but it pays off in the long run because you're still able to support your clients and their businesses just like they support you.
Well, and one of our clients is the Logan Square Chamber of Commerce. I mean, the actual neighborhood Chamber of Commerce is a client of ours because they run a farmer's market that is right outside our condo, like on the boulevard in front of where we live. And I'm meeting with them on a monthly basis on Zoom to talk about stuff. So I'm very, very plugged into the community, but that has been a conscious, very intentional approach since early on when I was, I've lived there for 25 years at this point. I've run my own business for 23. It's been conscious, it's been intentional since day one. And when you really believe in what your clients are doing, you want to support them, you find ways.
So then I know that there probably were some surprises, things that delighted you that you didn't even anticipate. What were some of the unexpected benefits that you found from making this lifestyle move and having a lifestyle firm?
Well, that's an easy one to answer because I never could have expected this in a million years, but how much energy I've been able to put into work that I otherwise would never have been able to sustain. I mean, the physical and the mental health benefits of being in a sunny environment with a pool. I have to do physical therapy. And back in Chicago, I would have to go to there's a physical rehabilitation center that I have to go to for physical therapy in their pool twice a week. Well, here I can do it 5 times a day. So that's pretty amazing. But another unexpected one, like really the mental challenges of speaking another language and learning a new culture. And I know you know what that is like, given that you travel a lot yourself and that you've got family abroad. Those are great opportunities to shift your mindset and take it away from work without just zoning out. So something I would do, when I was in Chicago, is it would just be like, oh boy, that was a tough day. Let me have a glass of wine and watch an old movie, which, hey, that's got its value. But I learned at some point, and this was before we made the move to Mexico, that one of the best ways to de-stress and get your brain away from work, especially when you tend to persever and replay things over and over and over and one of the best ways to do that is to use a different part of your brain. And so for me, dancing is obviously one of those things. I mean, they don't call me the dancing accountant because I'm a wallflower. So dancing is one of those things, cooking is one of those things, but speaking another language and learning a new culture, it's just amazing. And so as a result, I can really show up as my best self for my clients during the worst time of year. I mean, clients saw me show up during the pandemic. I keep saying they know I've got their back, right? And that was, I thought it would be good for me. I didn't recognize it would be good for them. And on a personal level, a side unexpected benefit, falling in love with the stars again. It's just magical. I was into astronomy when I was in my 20s and had abandoned that. I'm a member of the Adler Planetarium, and we go there a lot, and we attend their events. Go there every year for my birthday. But it's really hard to see the stars in Chicago. And being able to take a break at the same time every day and to see how the stars above us change every single night, just a little bit more than the night before. Oh, it's been magical. Also, that's a part of getting my brain outside of
Mhm.
the work and focusing on something else. So that was an
Yeah.
unexpected benefit.
I can see how that really touches you and your whole demeanor just
Absolutely.
changes and relaxes. Part of what I'm really hearing though is based on my study of neuroscience is that by having new experiences for you, it really lights up your brain. You're actually more engaged and present as opposed to checked out, and that's just as good a way of rejuvenating at the end of the workday
Absolutely.
than anything else could be.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because my mother has Alzheimer's. And so I do a lot of reading. I actually, on that topic, and my first job after high school was working as a nurse's aide in an Alzheimer's home. So I've also had some firsthand experience with it. And neuroplasticity is a pretty fascinating area of
Mhm.
study, but it is absolutely true that as we continue to learn new things or retraverse neural pathways, um, and really study other topics, that really helps our neuroplasticity. Well, think about what that means when you're working with clients and you're working during tax season and you've got stressful stuff going on. We need neuroplasticity.
Mhm.
We need for our brains to be flexible and think outside the box and be creative. And so yeah, I'm especially glad that you brought that up.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, Nancy, we have been traveling in many different directions during this conversation today. Uh, some of the things that we touched on is how to be able to take your firm remote, transitioning clients, and also some of the pros and cons of running a remote firm, especially when you might be out of your home base. So I really appreciate that, and that if people wanted to find out more about you, Nancy, what's the best way for them to follow up and do that?
Well, thank you for being such an incredible interviewer and moderator. I feel like I learned so much from our conversation. I have an award-winning blog. That is my labor of love. That's at thedancingaccountant.com/blog. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, and I will be speaking at Scaling New Heights and Bridging the Gap later this year. One of the things I'm most excited about, though, that is coming up, so keep an eye out for it, is I am finally, after many years of being badgered's too strong a word, requested, begged, is to finally start a Q&A cohort for bookkeepers who want to ask a CPA questions about entity choice, tax-ready books, adjusting journal entries, any number of things. People who don't necessarily feel like they can ask the tax preparers of their clients because it undermines their credibility, or to learn how to communicate better with those tax preparers. So shoot me a note at nancy@thedancingaccountant.com if you're interested in being in the beta group for that cohort.
Very, very nice. So thank you so much for the engaging conversation.
Oh, Lauren,
And
thank you for having me. This is great.
absolutely. This is Lauren Fogelman with Business Success Solutions, showing accounting professionals how to double their income working half the time.